I don't mean to be bragging on myself or nothing like that, but hey, that's just the way it was. That's part of that was part of my life, you know. My name is George Grayson. I was born in 1921 in Shreveport, Louisiana. I think that's my home, but we're originally from Natchitoches Parish. My parents were from Natchitoches Parish, around Winfield and around that area. My father moved to Clarence, Natchitoches in Clarence, Louisiana. So he moved from there to Alexandria, Louisiana. My mother died when I was about 3 months old. She died of pneumonia, so they say. I don't know, you know. But they say she died of pneumonia. And he married a lady from Alexandria. He was a minister. And he used to go to Alexandria to preach a revival. He would go to revival every year and preach in Alexandria. So he met this lady. She was the piano player, the church organist and piano player. And she used to also teach. She used to teach the kids in the neighborhood. She taught most of the kids in the neighborhood how to play a piano. Now, she didn't finish college or nothing like that, but she was a well-taught, I would say at that time, well-educated person. And people respected the whole family of them very much, you know. And so he moved to Alexandria after he got married. And her family had some homes. I think it was about 13 little old shotgun houses where he used to take care of. And he was kind of, called himself a decorator. And he would decorate the windows and stuff downtown for people and paint them and do all that stuff for them. You know, he did a good job, and, and he always kept a job. Plus, he worked at a sawmill. He worked at a sawmill part-time at the sawmill, because sawmill only worked so many days out of a year. And he worked at the sawmill and take care of these houses for the family. My stepmother, she had 2 brothers, and I don't know, neither one of them liked my father. They used to call him Reb. They didn't like him too much, you know. They didn't trust him with the money. They'd come and collect the money, but he did all the work around the houses. Once in a while, they let him collect the money. But anyway, my stepmother, she was kind of mean. She was strict, you know. But after I got older, I kind of appreciated her, you know. She didn't like my 2 sisters at all, but she kind of put up with me. She kind of liked me a little bit, but she didn't put up with them. So they moved to Shreveport, Louisiana with my other half-sisters. I had 2 other half-sisters. So they moved to Shreveport with them and left me there with her. I was the youngest anyway. I was the youngest person in the family growing up, you know. My dad, he sat down and he told me, you know, I was kind of mean. I got kind of mean too, you know. And he told me, he said, look, you gotta deal with this situation we're in, you know. We know that's not your mother. You keep telling her you're not my mother. And she knows that she's not your mother. But this is something that you gotta live with till you get old enough to move out of here, you know. My sisters and I, we was just like 3 peas in the potty. He had to deal with all 3 of us. If he whipped one of us or scold one of us, the others wouldn't leave out the room and let him scold us, you know. They would stay there and watch and do this. And so we were very tentative for one another, you know. Even after we got grown. If I wanted to go somewhere when the kids was growing up, I would go to my sister's house, you know. If I wanted something cooked special, I would ride way over Chicago to get me some gumbo. They would fix that good old gumbo, and I would eat that gumbo and come back home. And my kids and their kids were very close. They had about 2 or 3 girls and 1 boy, too. And then we was all pretty close, my sisters and I. I left Louisiana. I went to Kansas City. Me and my buddy, we called a freight train, what they call a hobo. And we stayed in the hobo area for 3 or 4 nights, you know, going to Kansas City. I don't know how many days it taking us on the freight train. But anyway, we went to Kansas City. Both of us sang in the choir at the church. And both of us had pretty good voices. Can't think of the name of the orchestra. Anyway, they told him he's going to be in Kansas City next week. And if you come to Kansas City, I'll hire you. And he went on to that orchestra and left me out there by myself. You know, I didn't know nobody. And come to find out, I had a half-sister lived in Kansas City, and I finally met them in Kansas City. I went to work at a Flowshine shoe store, and I would shine the shoes when the people buy them new shoes. And if you're black, later on I got so the man would let me sell shoes to them, you know. So I had a pretty good little job, wasn't paying nothing, you know. All I would get mostly was tips, and I had to live off of that. So later on, I went to Cut-Ed Packing Company and started working there. Then the war had started. I had indelible stamps. Every ham that they finished come down the line. It was a similar line, and I had to stamp that ham, you know, put that stamp on that stamp. And them stamps, and those hams was sent all over to different places for the soldiers, and you know, people bought them, you know, but they had to have that stamp on them, you know. And I worked that till I was called to the Army. My father and stepmother, they had to sign me up. I didn't sign up, but they signed me up, you know, for the Army, you know. And they called me, and I didn't go the first time. And the next time they told me if I didn't come, they were gonna send the cops at me. And I had never been in no jail or nothing like that. Shoot, I was scared me to death. So I went on down and went to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. That's where they introduced me at that time. And I left there, and they sent me, after I finished my induction, they sent me to Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky. I went to Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, and that's where I had my basic training at. That's near Evansville, Indiana, and Paducah, Kentucky, near Paducah, Kentucky. We had to go to Paducah to go back to the Breckenridge camp and catch the bus. If you go out on a leave or something like that, you had to go there, and that's where you catch the bus at. And when the bus was full, if it was full of white soldiers, you couldn't get on there. So when you get back, if you wasn't back there for reveille that next morning, most of the time you done sat in the bus station all night waiting to catch that bus back. But the Army didn't care. They said, that's your responsibility. If you see things is that way, don't go out, you know? And that's the alternative they gave us, you know. And they put me in the stockades for 3 days one time because I didn't show up on time. But I done sat in the bus station all night trying to wait till the bus get empty of white soldiers. I couldn't get back to camp. They said, we don't care. That's your responsibility. If you know that's gonna happen, don't leave here. We can't change the Army. The Army can't change this city. So that's the way things is. If you black, otherwise they tell you got to get back. So that's the way life was at that time. We went to from New York. We went around through the Panama Canal. Went to Australia, and we invaded the Philippines. And I was in an invasion of New Guinea. After that, we went to Okinawa, fitting to invade Japan. And we went there to pick up new equipment and all that stuff and have overtraining, I guess, you know. While we was in Okinawa, they dropped the atomic bomb. And that's when we was among the first one to come home. We came home when they put us on the first ship that out of there. And it was an aircraft carrier. We came home on an aircraft carrier. And we came through San Francisco. That's where we got discharged. It's San Francisco. Me and my buddy was going to Chicago, and we had some going to St. Louis, and we had to wait in San Francisco on trains. We catch the train to these places. So we caught the Chicago train, and we had to go through St. Louis. St. Louis was a kind of railhead where trains leave out there going different places, you know. And most people that come home from that area, they came through St. Louis. But we had to wait after we got to St. Louis to go to Chicago to catch the train in Chicago, which wasn't that far. But we had to go to Chicago to get our final papers from the Army. So me and my buddy, we decided we're going to look the town over, look St. Louis over. So St. Louis was, we knew that there was prejudice. There was prejudice all over everywhere. But we had walked around downtown looking at it, and we decided, we seen that store, and we seen in the window where on this restaurant had a counter. You know how they used to set these potato chips up on, and these bags of stuff on different racks? So they had that sitting not in the window, on the counter in the restaurant, but you could see them through the window. So we decided to go in there and get us a bag of potato chips. We went in this little restaurant, and they asked the guy, give me a bag of potato chips. He said, we don't have no potato chips. Say, anyway, get out of here. Say, they're not for sale for you. We said, that's potato chips. Yeah, you know. He said, well, they're not for sale for you. Now you get get the hell out of here, and don't you ever come back in here no more. Don't you see the sign up there where it said, I think it was colored black, or no color allowed, and colored not allowed in here, or something to that effect. He said, don't you see that sign? He said, you're not allowed in here. You get it? And yeah, I'm just coming from invasion Pacific, all out there, trying to save them from the Japs from coming over here to do whatever they were gonna do to them. And they didn't appreciate it. I never felt so bad in my life. That was the worst feeling I ever had, been in all that mud and snow and not ice, hot sunshine. It was 125 degrees in New Guinea. And it was hot in the Philippines. And swamps, all the swamps and stuff. They wouldn't want us to touch that water because the water was poison and all that, you know. And you had to keep from getting wet and all that, and they had storms over there all the time, and it was terrible. It was terrible. And come back and he wouldn't sell me a bag of potato chips. I cried. I felt so bad. Ooh, I felt bad. Yeah. So that was one of the worst feelings I had. I felt worse for him doing that to me and my buddy. You know, even today, when I talk about it, it just makes me shed tears. You know. My sister was in Shreveport with my half-sisters, And one of them got married, the oldest one got married, Izora. She got married, and she moved to Chicago because her husband's mother's sister lived there, and they went to Chicago, and that's why he went there. He went there to better off himself, to get a job and everything. And after I got out of the Army, that's where I wound up in Chicago. And the other sister wound up there too, to see the married sister, the older sister. See, I got to think how we got together, Hey, my sister was married to my wife. That was his cousin. No, that was her uncle. That was her uncle. I'm sorry, that was her uncle. And she was married to my wife's uncle. And my sister introduced me to my wife. And and later on, we got married, after we courted a couple of years, I think, or something like that. She was a nice girl, just had come out of Grady College, and she was a registered nurse, and she had a profession, and and I was going to school at that time. I had come out the Army, and I was going to get me some training too, And so we started courting, and I used to bring her over here. I had a car, and I used to bring her over here to see her parents. And I used to see these little houses and, and things. So, and we decided to buy one over here. And we had promised when the kid was born, we was going to buy one over here and move over here. And we used to come and see these little houses and all that, where in Chicago we always lived in a big old family flat, and it was nice. The ones we lived in was pretty nice, but, we decided we had to work to save our money, and we was gonna buy a house. And we said, we went around, looked at separate flats, 2 families, 4 families, and all that. But heck, all of them was over 100 years old. And at the time in Chicago, that's all you could buy at that time. They wasn't selling these single homes to all these Polish people had to move from Europe, had to come over here and bought all that single home up and all that stuff, and they wouldn't sell them to blacks, because they didn't want you in their neighborhood. You had to buy them old 200-year-old buildings. That's what you had to pay for. My wife said, we keep going over to, we say when the kids was born, at that time we had 2 kids. She said, you say you're gonna buy over where my mother lived in Michigan. So that's how we moved to Michigan. She said, we don't want them home. These old buildings and rat-infested buildings and stuff. We was looking at these little houses over here all the time. We told them we was gonna buy it, My wife, we used to come here to see her parents. Her parents lived in River Rouge, which is about 4 or 5 blocks from here. And we used to say, when our kids is born, we're gonna buy a house out in this neighborhood, At that time, it was just about, it was only 1 block on this neighborhood. That was the guy across the street, in the house across the street there. He died about, I'd say about 15 years ago. And he and his son and his wife, they was the first black I know in this neighborhood. And we was about the 2nd black in the neighborhood. Most of these frame homes that you see around here, they wasn't even built. They was all brick, and they was kind of scattered about. And each one of them had a lot on the side, And I thought it was a nice neighborhood. So we purchased the house in 1951. And then we moved here a little later after we purchased the house. But we didn't get in here immediately because the people didn't move until after we come from Chicago over here and redeemed the house. But they sold the house before we moved from Chicago. And when we moved over here, we had two boys. Stanley was the second one. Donald was the first one. It was about a year apart. We decided we was gonna move over here because these houses was single and a lot of yard, and, you know, a good playground right behind a Catholic school there, and, you know, we was gonna try to give them a good education. You know, I figured the school they went to is St. Andrews and Benedict, right behind us. Is one block behind us, and they would walk out of the backyard into the schoolyard. That's what made me more interested. That made my wife and I more interested. And that's why and the boys they had a lot of yard to play. I built a ice rink out for them and built a basketball court for them, and we had volleyball, and we used to have the boys from different neighborhoods come, after they get out of school, they'd come over here and practice football, basketball, and they would play games, you know. I was a kind of sports lover, the reason I did all of it. You know. Well, they came pretty quickly, you know, because the whites started moving out after, you know, another black moved into the neighborhood. We just liked the neighborhood. That's why we moved here. So it didn't bother me because when we lived in Chicago, we lived in a white neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood on the west side, on Holman Avenue. At that time, we was about the second block on that street, you know, after me and my wife first got married. And so it didn't bother me, but they started moving out pretty immediately after we moved in, you know. I guess they could tolerate one black, but after two moved in, then the whole neighborhood went black, just about. I'm probably the only one on the street, only black on the street originally. I'm the only person on the street originally. It's kind of getting overall, you know, mixed neighborhood, I would say. I live here because I could feed my family mostly, you know. I mean, this is what, you know, I like my job, and my wife, she was a RN nurse, and she worked at the Veteran Hospital most of the time, and she was close to work. I was a pretty good ways from work, but anyway, I didn't mind getting up in the morning and going to work, you know, because my kids was going to school, and my son, they loved sports, and our recreation was we went to a lot of the games, the Pistons and Tigers, and, you know, and that was one of our mostly recreations, what we did, you know. And the boys stayed out of trouble, you know, which was great, you know, and I loved that. And after that, I had two daughters come up in the family. One moved to LA, California, and she passed in California at a young age. And my daughter is here now with me. She came back home from Texas. She was a traveling dialysis nurse, and she came back home to take care of her dad, and I appreciated it very much, you know, which I thought was wonderful, you know. So we get along good, and we have little fusses and little spats in there once in a while. I said, Daddy do this, Daddy do that, Daddy do this. Take this kind of medicine, don't take that kind of medicine. Well, I didn't think I'd be here this long, but hey, I'm here. So, and I'm enjoying it. When we moved over here, my buddy got me a job at Chrysler's. And before I left Chicago, I had taken automotive rebuilding, and with the intention of moving over here sooner or later, you know. I worked at Chrysler for about 5 years. When I got the job, I was doing metal finishing and repairing. They put me on the job, me and 2 other guys, was 3 of us, and they didn't want no blacks doing that kind of work. It was one of the highest paying assembly jobs, was on assembly, doing an assembly plant. And the union let them people went out for 3 days because they didn't want me and 2 other guys, black guys, on this particular job. That's the way they used to do when blacks get on there. They just quit working and go on off, left off, and wouldn't come back in 3 days until we was removed. But the union stepped in and said, no, we're not gonna remove these guys. You know, they're gonna have that job, and either y'all work or we're gonna start hiring. We're gonna get the company to start hiring more people. And him and I stayed on that job. And after so many years, that was when they started sending the Hungarians over here. And if we didn't have 10 years on the job, they take us off and put the Hungarians on there. That's how we lost our job at Chrysler. After I came out of there, I went to Ford's, put in for a job at Ford's. Ford hired us, all the Chryslers that they was putting off, giving the Hungarian their job. Ford was hiring them, you know, because they was experienced workers. So I went on to Ford's and got a job, and got a job doing the same thing, you know. And Ford kept us, you know, I worked there for 30 years, you know, and there was no problem. Later on, I went up to be a quality control. I was a quality controls inspector coordinator. I would coordinate from the office to the floor on different problems and different say-sos, what the engineers, along with the engineers, you know. Those were mostly my supervisor at the time after I got upgraded, you know. And so it was a good job. I enjoyed the job, you know. Then I could pull a car off and inspect it, put it on the road, whatever I wanted to do, and whatever that was part of my assignment. You know, and I would be assigned sometime. Every Monday I had to go over dealers' complaints. For instance, you know, the car was leaking water or wind noise and all that stuff. I would put it on the road and see where this was coming from. Where maybe the weather strip wasn't fitting right, or this wasn't fitting right, or this so and so, according to the manual, engineering manual. Everything was done by engineer. Anything that comes in there had to come through quality control. You know, the car was built off of quality, you know, and that was my job. I was raising my family at the time, you know, and especially my boys, you know, and I knew how society was. Society were hard on black boys, black men especially, you know. And I made sure that I was part of the community. You know, I was block club chairman. I was chairman over the block club. See all these lights and stuff, lawn lights and stuff up here? I instituted all that stuff. And I would have meetings in my basement and invite everybody in that block or in that neighborhood to come. And we would have different speakers from the council, city councils to come down. And they gladly came down. And, you know, some of the professors at different high schools and grade school, they would come and they would speak. And I made sure, and my wife was so cooperative. I really appreciate her. She was so cooperative about it. If so-and-so next door or block down or a couple of houses down was cutting their grass and they was ill, we would make sure that some of our men folks, I would do that. Make sure that they would, let's go down here and cut the, if it did not send my 2 boys down there to cut this lady grass. I didn't make them accept no money or nothing like that until they got old enough to start carrying papers. Both my boys were paper boys. Now they got paid. But I had, on some of these people, I had to go around to their house with them to collect the money. but they got paid. But we had to pay the paper boy. I paid the paper boy out of my pocket. And they were very good boys, and they did everything I told them to do. And the mother, my wife, after that, after the girls come along, I had 2 girls, after they come along, she said, well, you take care of the boys, and I take care of the girls. Not take care of them welter-like, but you teach them girls thing. I'm going to teach them girls thing, and you're going to teach the boys thing. You can't come and tell them girls, because I'll come on her sometime about why the girl's not at home, or why this or that, or why, well, I let them do this. Well, I didn't mind. They didn't know all of this, but I didn't mind if she said she said it was okay for them to do things, this and that. But some of the stuff I didn't like, And she would get on me and say, you tell them boys, and I'm going to take care of them girls. You man, you know what men do, and I know what girls do. And that's the way we kind of got along, She didn't get mad at me or nothing by saying nothing, and I didn't get mad at her by saying nothing to the boys or girls, either one, But we raised them together, We didn't talk too much about the racism no more than, the way things were, Like the boys, they went to Catholic school. Both of them had white teachers most of the time. They would come home sometime and say, they never say they was prejudiced, they say, but this teacher did so and so, so and so. Well, you're doing the right thing, son. You come home and told me. I deal with that. I go over and talk to the teachers. If I didn't go, I was working or something, and my wife was off, she would go. We would deal with the teachers. One while I was, when Stanley and Donald was playing grade school ball just before high school, I would help the coach during the basketball time. That's how we brought them up playing sports, And I didn't miss a game. I would take the girls, when we go to different games, I would use my car. I bought a station wagon. I would use that station wagon to take the girls, cheerleaders, to different games. I went to every game they had, and, see them jump up and down. And when the team lose, all them little cheerleaders, they'd come home in the car crying and going on and saying they prejudiced us, say they didn't do nothing out the way. Because I'm going to see to that they didn't do nothing out the way. And the coach was the same way, We didn't allow it. If we see it happen, we call it to their attention, even at that time, And we got along good with all the team. I've been to almost every grade school in Detroit area, because we played all those teams, and we was a little winning team until the boys went on to high school. Now we did like every other parent. We had to get on their butt, sometimes. But and my daughter was a registered nurse, and went to University of Michigan. My other daughter went to Mercy College to be a psychiatrist. She didn't finish, but she went and got a good job after that. And Don went on to the service, went on to the Marine. He was a Marine Master Sergeant. And Stanley, he went on to Holy Cross. From there, he would have went to Harvard. He wanted to be at home. He had been away from home so long. And come on, went to the University of Michigan. passed the bar, and went on to New York and became a lawyer there for Prudential, I think it was, vice president of Goldman Sachs, and went on to be deputy mayor of New York City. Yeah, and married a nice, fine young lady, which I love her. She went to University of Michigan, and came on out, went to Harvard and back and graduated magna cum laude. Hey, and all of them, we feel wonderful about our family. I do. Yeah, and my wife did before she passed, you know. All of my kids, I got 3 living children, and all of them are, they're very, very, yeah, good to me. And I love them, and they love me. I feel they love all the time, and I'll be so glad to see them. I always try to show them how I feel about them, and the things that I ask them to do, I show them, even working around the house. When we did some work, I said, I'm not telling you to do anything I wouldn't do. And even cutting the grass and keeping the house up and things like that, we would take turns doing this. I do it one day, they do it the next day, the other one do it the next day. You know, boys work around the house and stuff like that. And they carried on from that, you know, and that's the way they are today. Well, I appreciate Joe Louis and Tommy Hearns. I used to go see Tommy Hearns all the time at Olympia Stadium over here. And the boys, they didn't like boxing. That's one sport they didn't care about, was boxing. But I loved the boxing. It used to be when you go to Briggs Stadium, if you sit down, sometimes these whites would get up and go sit in another seat, you know, from beside you and stuff like that, you know. All that stuff kind of done improve now. You don't hear all that, you know. Hey, I was amazed when they did elect a black president, you know. I was glad to see it because it came in my time, you know. I was still alive, you know. I didn't think it would ever happen, you know, years ago, the way the situation were with the whole United States, you know. I didn't think, you know, they would elect a black president, you know. And I was always hoping for it, but hey, my whole thing in my life was, you know, I wanted my kids to be treated right. I wanted my family to be treated right. And I wanted them to treat people as they wanted to be treated. I want everything to turn out right with most people, you know, neighborhood and what else. I don't do much now because, you know, my condition, you know, and when I see something go wrong, you know, I wish I could do something about it, but I'm just wishing now. I can't, ain't much I can do about what's going on, you know. I was glad to see them elect Democrats. I was glad to see them elect a governor, Democratic government. And, you know, I had quite a few friends that was in office at one point or another. You know, I did what I could do, you know, at that time. Maybe I didn't do enough, but. So most of these kids will come back now and visit. Hi, Mr. Grayson, or give me a call on my birthday and other things. They bring me barbecue dinners, all that stuff. I have 4 or 5 barbecue dinners sometimes, 3, 4, 2 or 3 sometimes. And when I had my 100th birthday, they called me from all over Texas, Kansas City, Tennessee, New York, Washington, D.C. They all called. Hey, Uncle George, how you doing? How you doing, Uncle George? So, and I appreciate them, you know. And I appreciate, you know, that they appreciate me, you know. So I don't mean to be bragging on myself or nothing like that, but hey, that's just the way it was. That's part of That was part of my life, you know.